Welcome to another hashtag Football Friday edition of Second City Sports, live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee, which is she. I am Sydney Bray. Hey, folks, that's me.
Mhm.
You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidK80. Once again, it's SidK80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
Make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, at Sports Zone Chicago, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps, whether it's Amazon, iTunes, Apple iTunes Store, wherever you get your apps, Google Play, there we go. Wherever you get your apps, make sure that app says Sports Zone Chicago. You know why? Because you can catch any of our live shows, including this one, Second City Sports. If you miss any of our other live shows, that's okay. You go back and listen and watch them at your own leisure. You can catch the audio version of this podcast by subscribing to War on Anchor. We're available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. Make sure you type in those search engine boxes on those podcast platforms, WARR on Anchor. And you can follow War Media on all social media platforms as well. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at WARR Media. Once again, at War Media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. But thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. Lakeena, let's kick off this episode of Second City Sports on a hashtag Football Friday. Of course, as we always do, we kick it off with basketball talk. The Chicago Bulls, they stand at 17-9 on the season. They have a game in South Beach against the Miami Heat tomorrow. But first, we had to talk about some news off the court. They have 5 players right now in COVID protocols. There have been some reports, using air quotes here, and some chatter that tomorrow's game against the Miami Heat will be postponed. As of right now, the game will go on. The Bulls, as I mentioned, they have 5 players, including DeMar DeRozan, Derrick Jones, as of yesterday in protocols. And we'll see if they get some good news today. Of course, Alex Caruso has missed the last couple of games due to an injury. He may make his return tomorrow against the Miami Heat. We'll have a friend of the show and Bulls insider for NBC Sports Chicago, Mr. Rob Schaffer, joining us at the bottom of the hour to give us the latest updates on the Chicago Bulls with their situation going on. So we'll talk to him about that and more at the bottom of the hour. Lakeena, let's go into their last game against the Cleveland Cavaliers on Wednesday. Of course, the Bulls, as we mentioned, misses several key players due to COVID protocols. They lose to the Cavaliers 115-92. Derrick Jones, as I mentioned at the top, he's in COVID protocols. He scored 11 points as he filled in for DeMar DeRozan in the starting lineup. Nikolai Vucevic had 18 points, but struggled shooting, especially from the outside from three-point land, 1 of 7 in 31 minutes of action. You had Lonzo Ball with 19 points and 7 assists. Zach LaVine did his thing, 23 points on 9 of 21 shooting. Ayo Dosunmu got another start. He struggled, only scoring 5 points in 34 minutes, even though he was 2 for 2 from the field. Lakeena, we talked about this all year, especially after the Patrick Williams injury. Their interior defense is terrible. I know that the Bulls can beat you with their speed and quickness, but this is something that's going to have to be addressed. It's not going to happen right away, but we saw from Cleveland, Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, he may be the rookie of the year when all is said and done at the end of the year, but those 2 players for Cleveland did damage big time to the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, Garland has been having a great year so far, and he's one of the reasons why Cleveland is, right at the, right above 500, for 14-12, and look, this is one of those games where you just throw it in the trash. You're gonna have a handful of these in a long season. Half the the Bulls team are have COVID or they're in protocol, so they were out like half their team. So and look, that Cavs team was actually pretty good, like you said before. I mean, Evan Mobley, I think he's the front runner for Rookie of the Year. They have Jared Allen, who's still been pretty solid for them. So I kind of look, like, again, I know people want to say, oh, because how Bulls Twitter is, they want to trade Vooch, back to bad Vooch. And look, I think people need to kind of just chill for a second. He scored 18, so it's not like he struggled for the Philly. He had a double. But again, this is one of those games where the Bulls, you put it in the trash, you forget about it. You play we'll see what happens with this Heat game came tomorrow because like you said, there have been rumors that because of and this is not just a Bulls issue. Apparently, this is a league wide issue. We'll get to that in a second, but
Mm-hmm.
various teams have been dealing with COVID and such and protocols too. So it's cold and flu season. What more can you do? But hopefully they'll be able to get the game in, and may not have to reschedule for the rest of the towards near the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
They have, and the good news is that no games have none of the games have had to have been rescheduled or
Mm-hmm.
postponed. But we'll just have to wait and see. And look, I mean, you look at their schedule coming up. They have Detroit on. They don't play again until Tuesday if they should they not play against Miami.
Mm-hmm.
They have Toronto, then LeBron and the gang, with the Lakers. We'll get to them in a second. Comes here, next Sunday. So they got a pretty, I don't want to say like easy schedule. They got a pretty lenient schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So these next few, next couple of weeks, up and down for the most part. So they've got their chances. Hopefully, by the time this stuff comes up, I mean, hopefully a lot of those guys will be back. Like DeRozan and Jones Jr. and such. Maybe hopefully Alex Caruso will be back by then as well with his going through his hamstring injury. So I think it's just one of those things where you just have to this is the new world that teams are going through. So you gotta it's the ebbs and flows through the season. Yeah, yes, you may have to deal with COVID. They're not the only ones, but you just gotta roll with the punches.
Going back to the box score from the Bulls game the other night against Cleveland, and you mentioned Evan Mobley. He had 16 points and 9 rebounds in 32 minutes of action. Kevin Love, we saw a signing from him. Maybe could be in the buyout market around the trade deadline. Who knows? But in 20 minutes of action, he had 11 points and 5 rebounds. Dean Wade, not D Wade, not our Chicago owns Dwayne Wade. Dean Wade out of Kansas State.
Yes.
He had 9 points and 5 minutes of action. Of course, Darius Garland had 24 points and 6 rebounds. Of course, Lauri Markkanen, the former Chicago Bull, he had 14 points on 5 of 8 shooting, including 2 for 4 for 3-point range. You could tell he was smiling and giddy a little bit as he did his thing against his former team. As you mentioned, Lakeena, I'm not too worried about, like I said, Cleveland. Maybe they'll hang around at the end of that. It's the case, so be it. But this is not the Cleveland Cavaliers here before LeBron came back the second time. It's not that team anymore. Too bad Colin Sexton isn't there. I know he's injured for perhaps for the year, but this Cavaliers team will give you a fight. Yeah, the Bulls weren't they didn't have that full roster. Like you said, just throw it out the window. I guarantee you, even if they had DeRozan, they would have beaten the Cavaliers. Not saying the Cavaliers are a slouchy team, no way, but the Bulls didn't have that full roster. The next time they'll play them, hopefully the Bulls will be majority healthy and they'll get the Cavaliers. So, like you said, I'm concerned about the interior defense, but that's been a concern of ours all season long. But you throw this game out the window and you have revenge on your mind tomorrow night against the Heat on the road.
Yeah, assuming that game is played. I mean, I know the Heat's having various issues too, not through COVID, but through injuries. But they did get a big win against the Bucks. I know our buddy Alana Tucker, who's a big Heat fan, we've had on the show multiple times. Yeah, I know she was happy about that win. But yeah, I mean, look, this is sort of the ebbs and flows of a long season. Some teams have to deal with COVID. Some teams have to deal with injuries. Half their guys being injured and banged up. So it's one of those things that it happens a lot. That's what this unfortunately, like I said, a few minutes ago, this is a new world we're living in. And look, that Cavs team, imagine if Sexton was there, they'd probably be like right in the middle of the pack in the East. So
yeah,
this is actually a pretty good Cavs team. They got some good young talent. This is not like those LeBron teams post LeBron that were terrible. Well, like I said, Kevin Love's been looking pretty good. We'll see if he's out there in the buyout market. We'll talk about a team that's rebuilding, in a little bit, but we'll probably even talk about that with Rob. But it's just one of those things where look, it's a long season. You're gonna have little bumps in the road, whether it's COVID or injuries and such. So the key is how do you come back from that? And look, the good news is that the Bulls have had a couple of days off. They've had guys. Alfonso McKinney is back with the Bulls organization. They just signed him up, as a hardship signing. We'll ask Rob about that. So, it's one of these where hopefully they can maybe, take advantage of the fact that, the Heat's also having their own various issues too. So hopefully they can get their revenge tomorrow night.
You're listening to Second City Sports live and in living color on the hashtag Football Friday right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, Lakeena are here with you as we talk Bulls basketball, and we're going to talk about the rest of the league in just a second. Rob Schaffer, as you mentioned, Lakeena, he'll be joined from NBC Sports Chicago. He covers the Bulls. He'll join us at the bottom of this hour to give us the latest on the Bulls and their COVID situation, and perhaps tomorrow night's game as well against the Miami Heat. Of course, the Bulls are already down there, so hopefully that game will take place with no issues. If you have a question or comment for us, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. But if you decide to troll or do something stupid, Lakeena will give you the city of Glendale, Arizona boot.
Like the Coyotes. Oh, brother.
Yeah, we'll get on that later.
Yeah, we will. But yeah, I mean, what sort of caught your eye this week in the NBA, Sid?
The Los Angeles Lakers, of course, they blew out the Boston Celtics in front of a national audience on Tuesday. Russell Westbrook had 23 points in the game. He had 15 in the third quarter there. On the flip side, Boston went 0 for 2 on their current West Coast road trip, losing to the Lakers and the Clippers on back-to-back nights. But let's start with the Lakers first. The Lakers, they look good in the win against Boston. They're playing defense. Russell Westbrook was finally being consistent, getting on track. LeBron James is back healthy. Anthony Davis, some people question, does he have the heart? Does he have the toughness? Does he have the dog attitude in him to take it over? We'll get to Charles Barkley's comments in just a second. But last night, the Lakers played at Memphis. No John Morant for the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies blew out the Lakers in the fourth quarter. There are many questions to whether will this Lakers team even be together roster-wise at the All-Star break. They can't do anything as far as trades because they're cash strapped. They're over the salary cap, and there's talks that Frank Vogel could be fired. I know this is a professional business; someone has to pay for it, but it should be Frank Vogel. It should be GM Ron Pelinka, but let's be honest, I don't think he's going to get the axe either. It'll probably just be the head coach.
Yeah, and I think there's questions about that because I saw some of those tweets, last couple of games for the Lakers. You thought that maybe they could that they've gotten together against the Celtics. They take two steps forward. I mean, a step forward, but then they end up taking like 2 or 3 steps back. I mean, and LeBron, we got to give him a shout out. His due. He became the 5th player in NBA history to reach 100 career triple doubles. Join the likes of Russell Westbrook, his teammate, the Big O, Oscar Robertson, Magic, and J Kidd. So you got to give them some props for that accomplishment. But as far as the team, I mean, it's just weird. They're at 13-13. They're at 500, as of this recording, and it's one of those things where you thought that maybe you took like I said, they take 2 steps, they take a step forward, then maybe they can they're getting into a rhythm, then they take a couple of steps back, and unfortunately they still look lackadaisical. They still look unorganized. Carmelo's been struggling. Dwight Howard, you don't know where he fits into this team. And look, you got your guys have tried to step up, Avery Bradley, Horton Tucker. I mean, Malik Monk, he was good. He's been good, but he's had his struggles. DeAndre Jordan didn't even play. So unfortunately, there's someone that's going to have to pay it. Probably it's going to end up being Coach Vogel, I feel like.
It shouldn't be that way, but I know the expectations are tremendous in Los Angeles. Is win or go home. And regarding Charles Barkley, I don't know if you caught it on Tuesday. He said that Anthony Davis should play much better. He should have that attitude that he's one of the top 5 best players in basketball right now. He's not bringing it. We talked about this before the season started, Lakeena. This is not LeBron's team anymore. This is Anthony Davis's team. And Anthony Davis, the offense should run through him. He should play better than what he's been playing. Do I blame it all on him? No, but he's the focal point of this Lakers team. He's the franchise now. And here's the thing, and I heard some people say this over the last couple of years. This is what happens when you give the keys to the franchise, and i.e. LeBron James, you depend on him too much. I know he's in his 19th year, but 2 out of 3 years he's been in Los Angeles, he's been injured. And so this is what happens when you get the keys to the franchise of the franchise to you, the best player. This is what happens. He's got all his buddies on his team now, and look what's happened. I know the last year's team was riddled by injuries, including James's own injury with that ankle injury. But this roster lacks balance right now. I'll give him a sort of a pass because Trevor Ariza, who they picked up over the summer, he hasn't played yet this year. But besides that, this roster is unbalanced. I know it takes time for people to fill in their roles, but what are their roles right now?
Yeah, and I think once Ariza, yeah, I think there are rumors that he might be back, right before by Christmas. So
Mhm,
hopefully, if you're a Lakers fan, hopefully, because they really do need him. And look, I kind of feel like at this point, I mean, someone's got to take the brunt of it. The fact that this team still, it's been 26 games, you're about a third through the season, this team still hasn't
mhm,
gotten it together. And unfortunately, the coach might end up getting the blame. Which is it's unfortunate, but it is a business. And look, LeBron's got his boys now, and hopefully they can get it together. But right now, they're meandering on 500. They're kind of like in the middle of the pack in the West. A lot of people thought they'd be right there for a one seed. So you just got to wait and see what happens. Now probably the most impressive thing for me this week was the Clippers. Look like the Clippers are kind of starting to kind
mhm,
of find their rhythm a little bit. They got a big win against Portland on Monday. They had a big win against Boston on Wednesday. And look, it's not just PG. That's I mean, look, PG's doing this thing. He's scoring and whatnot. But he's getting contributions from some of the other guys. I don't think he didn't even play yesterday on Wednesday because of an elbow injury.
mhm,
But they all the other guys stepped up. I mean, Marcus Morris stepped up, Reggie Jackson and Terrence Mann. I mean, and also too Serge Ibaka. Wait, not Serge Ibaka. Brandon Boston Jr. I know some people you've never heard
mhm,
of that guy, but he's kind of a he's not a journeyman. He's been playing. I think he's been playing with the he's from Kentucky. If the name sounds familiar, are you to Kentucky fans? He's the first round
mhm,
pick, and he's now trying to find his rhythm. And had a career high 27 off the bench, and then that big win against Boston.
mhm.
So the Clippers, whether the Lakers are not, maybe kind of meh, but the Clippers they're starting to get into a rhythm.
Yeah, I did watch the second half of that game the other night on my computer screen. You mentioned Brandon Boston, the rookie, had a great game. Of course, a couple of days before then, he got called back up. He scored 46 points in the G League game. So, and I
Mm-hmm.
caught his post game interview with Jimmy Maggio, the Clippers sideline reporter at the end of the game. That
Who's
young
great,
man
by the
sounds,
way.
yeah, exactly. He was very humble,
Yes.
appreciative on the moment, and he played a big role in the Clippers win over Boston. Boston was coming back after trailing big at halftime, but
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Boston held his own, and like you mentioned, Lakeena, the rest of that roster held it together for that win. The Clippers, I still they're going to be a team to be reckoned with, especially when Paul George gets back. Hopefully, Kawhi and Leonard can come back later on in the season, and they'll definitely be a dangerous team. But what a performance by Mr. Brandon Boston! He definitely deserves his props and the player of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Coach Calipari was bragging a little bit. If you saw,
You know he
you know, he,
was.
he was bragging a little bit, like, hey, that's one of my guys. But yeah, it was a fun performance by him, and in the key game, like I said before, I think the Clippers are starting to kind of finding a rhythm here. Dallas, on the other hand, not so much. And
What the
yeah.
heck? Not to interrupt, Lakeena, but what the hell was that on Tuesday in their 3-point loss to the Brooklyn Nets? No one wanted to to catch the ball to shoot the potential game tying three. Luca ended up shooting it, but it was playing hot potato. They were very disorganized. I didn't understand it. Maybe you saw something I didn't. I don't know.
Well, yeah, KD was right there in that area. Maybe they thought that KD's gonna somehow block the shot. I guess Luca ended up trying taking it, but of course he missed it. But they rebounded a little bit. They broke Memphis's 6-game winning streak on Wednesday, so that
Mhm,
kind of helps with the morale on the team. And Luca did some comments that I'm not really 100% committed, and he's kind of dragging along. Which is something that you don't want to hear your top guys say, but it is what it is. But Dallas has been kind of up and down. Some people are saying that can Jason Kidd kind of get it together, but
mhm.
we'll see about them. I mean, they're kind of right in the middle of the back there. They're kind of right in the play-in game areas right now. So we'll see if
Yeah,
maybe if Dallas can get it together.
and also the Brooklyn Nets. Speaking of the Brooklyn Nets, they split their 2-game series in the state of Texas. Of course, we talked about their win at Dallas on Tuesday. The following night, they lost to the Houston Rockets, 114 to 104. Break up the Rockets, Lakeena. You mentioned them in our last show on Monday. I believe that's now 8 in a row. They're 8-16 on the
Hmm.
season. I don't think this team is going to make the playoffs. They're in a rebuilding stage, but
Right.
It's a very good story down there in Houston right now. Brooklyn, I know they're 17-8. They're battling the Bulls for the top spot in the Eastern Conference, but this is a nice feel good story for the moment for the Rockets and their fans.
Well, remember, I think KD, and Harden, yeah, I think KD didn't play, I think he took a rest day, so I think that's why that might have been why they lost. But even still, they probably should have beaten them. But yeah, I mean, 8 in a row for Houston, and that's 8 and 60. I don't know what to think. I mean, look, I'm not gonna sit here and say they're gonna compete for a playoff spot, but they look good. I mean, like Eric Gordon is still there. He's led the way with that in that game. Garrison Matthews is they got Amani Brooks. I mean, they got a lot of good young talent on that team. They just gotta develop a little bit more, and maybe they can kind of use this as momentum for next season because they will have money in the cap, so maybe they can try to get a star to come on the team. But yeah, and also John Wall isn't playing yet. I mean that whole saga, that's another story for another episode.
Yeah.
But that whole thing. But look, it's a nice story for Houston, and I think that maybe Houston, I'm not gonna say. I think they're showing people that look, we're not. You're not gonna as our buddy Dave Watson have said about the Bulls. No one. You can't go to the club anymore. And Stephen Silas, look, he learned from his dad, so he's got those guys
Paul
playing
Silas.
pretty well. Yeah, so.
Yeah, you're listening to Second City Sports Live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Lakeena McGee is she. I am Sydney Brown, which is me. Lakeena, before we close out this half hour and bring on Rob Schaffer from NBC Sports Chicago to talk Bulls further, let's give our listeners the schedule for this weekend's games in the National Basketball Association, starting with tonight's game. The first game of the ESPN doubleheader will have the Brooklyn Nets, as we mentioned, taking on the Atlanta Hawks down there in State Farm Arena, followed by the Boston Celtics in the Phoenix Suns. That's the second game of the ESPN doubleheader tonight.
I think they're finishing up their West Coast road trip. Boston is, so it's been up and down for them. So hopefully they can finish strong. Lakers play OKC. We'll see if they can kind of bounce back from that loss. Should be a fun one. Also, New York and Toronto. I know Toronto has had their COVID outbreak. Messiah Ujiri, who's the GM, he confirmed that he tested positive. Seems to be an outbreak up there. So we'll see how the team looks against New York, who's had their own issues. Now, Saturday's game, real quick, you got the first of the ABC primetime games, and you got a good one here at 7:30. You got Golden State and Philadelphia. Embiid started to kind of find his rhythm a little bit. It was a little bit scary because I think he scored like 40-some points a couple of days ago. He said he's not even at 100% yet, so that's a little bit scary. And Golden State, they're playing well. They had struggled, their last game, but should be a fun one in Philly.
Yeah, and also too a couple of quick games for Saturday. The Orlando at the Clippers at 2:30. The Jazz and the Utah Jazz continue their East Coast road trip. They'll play the Washington Wizards at 6 o'clock, and then of course the Nuggets and the Spurs at 7:30. For Sunday, we'll have the Bucks and the New York Knicks at 11 o'clock, right before football, folks. So you can tune into that one if you can. And of course, Dallas at OKC at 6 o'clock. Of course, the Timberwolves at Portland at 8 o'clock, and then the Orlando Magic and the Los Angeles Lakers tomorrow night at 8:30. So those are your key weekend games in the National Basketball Association. We hit the bottom of the hour break. When we return right here on Second City Sports Live in living color, right here on Sports Zone Chicago, we're going to have good friend of the show, Mr. Rob Schaffer from NBC Sports Chicago. He's going to hop on with us to talk more Bulls in the NBA. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago. NFL on Sunday, the Bears fell 33-22 at home against the Arizona Cardinals. Chicago dropped to 4-8 with the loss. Andy Dalton picked off 4 times, 26 of 41 passing, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns. David Montgomery rushed the ball 21 times for 90 yards and a touchdown. Dalton got sacked 3 times in the loss. On the other side, Kyler Murray returned to the lineup, 11 of 15 passing, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also rushed for a pair of scores. NBA tonight, the Bulls host the Nuggets. Chicago with wins in 3 straight. The Bulls are 16-8 overall, just a half game behind the Nets for the top spot in the East. NHL, the Blackhawks beat the Islanders 3-2. 22 saves for Marc-Andre Fleury. Regulation goals from Brandon Hagel and Dylan Strome. Chicago's Patrick Kane with the shootout winner. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Research shows that people remember radio ads with lots of sound effects. So to help you remember that Liberty Mutual Insurance Company customizes your home insurance so you only pay for what you need, here are some zany sounds. Saving on home insurance is no laughing matter. Liberty Mutual customizes your home insurance so you only pay for what you need. The money you save could change your life. It's time for you to take your insurance choice seriously. Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
It's Macy's one-day sale tomorrow with deals of the day to wrap up your holiday shopping. Like 40% off fresh fragrances from Juicy Couture, Michael Kors, and more. Give the gift of sparkle with 60% off diamond bracelets, pendants, and rings. And 50 to 60% off designer suits and blazers. Plus, everyone gets $10 Macy's money for every $50 spent. Savings off sale and clearance prices. Exclusions apply. See Macy's.com/Macy's money for details.
Welcome back to Second City Sports on the hashtag Football Friday. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown, and join us right now to continue our Bulls discussion and, of course, going around the rest of the NBA. We have good friend of the show from NBC Sports Chicago, Mr. Rob Schaffer. Sir, welcome back to our program. How are you?
I'm great. It's always a pleasure being on. Really appreciate it. The Bulls are going through it right now, but no complaints from me.
Yeah, this is the first time we have you on since we've gone live now. So you know this as well as I do. Live TV, live radio, anything goes. So This is not pre-recorded anymore. So we just had to take it in stride. Speaking of taking it in stride, as you mentioned, in any season, teams will go through obstacles and go through adversity. The Bulls are going through it right now with 5 players currently on COVID protocol. Alex Caruso may be returning to tomorrow night's game against the Heat. What's the latest that you have regarding the Bulls' situation with dealing with COVID?
Yeah, so on the COVID front, they've got 5 players in protocols. They all went in over the span of last Wednesday through yesterday on Thursday. So it's a bit of an outbreak. It's a bit of kind of a snowball effect where guys have been getting affected seemingly every day. It started with Kobe White and Javonte Green last week. DeMar DeRozan obviously goes in on Monday. That's a huge, huge loss. And then you had Matt Thomas and Derek Jones Jr. Jones Jr., who's been a key rotation player, and Thomas, who kind of had to step in as other people were absent. They went in on Wednesday and Thursday, respectively. And then, as you mentioned, Sydney, on top of that, Alex Caruso dealing with this hamstring issue that he's been kind of battling since the Knicks game last week. He tried it out in one game against the Nets. They pulled him, didn't like how he was moving. He had a reevaluation date set for that hamstring for early next week. But Billy Donovan said in Cleveland that he had been progressing well. They were going to ramp him up over the next couple of days of practice in what, limited practice the Bulls are able to do, obviously traveling and dealing with all this COVID stuff. And that, he wasn't, he hadn't been officially ruled out against Miami yet. Now, did Billy sound optimistic he was going to come back? Not necessarily. I wouldn't say that it's something that should be expected, but the door is open in a way that it didn't seem like it would be at the beginning of the week. So the Bulls practice today. We'll see how guys fare tomorrow throughout game day. I'm sure they'll want to try him out and warm him up. And if I had to guess, I'd guess he'd be kind of a game time decision for tomorrow if he is going to play. So we will see on that. But between that, the COVID stuff, Patrick Williams has obviously been out for a while. The rotation is just so strained outside of Zach, Lonzo, and Vooch that, to the extent that the Bulls have had to sign a couple 10-day contracts over the last few days just to kind of, have warm bodies to throw in there. So that's the latest. I mean, with this COVID stuff, it's kind of hard to say, like, who knows, maybe more stuff comes out and more people have to enter protocol and this becomes an even more dire situation. But as of right now, that's where the team is at.
Yeah, it's not just the Bulls either. They're having this issue. If we have time, we'll talk about that. But just besides the COVID outbreak, which we can't control that. But what has impressed you so far about this Bulls team? The fact that they were able to beat Denver pretty handily, shorthanded. The fact that they've been able to do this. They beat the Nets. They, also with without their their team being at full strength. What's impressed you the most so far about this team?
At full strength, I think what's been impressive is that management, no matter what you thought of the offseason changes that they made at the time, And a lot of people were critical of a couple of them, including the DeMar DeRozan sign and trade. No matter what you thought of those moves in the moment, all of them had an underlying intention behind them to address weaknesses from this team from last season. And what's impressed me this season is how quickly a lot of those issues have kind of flipped on their head. This was one of the highest turnover teams in the NBA last year. They've been turning the ball over a lot less this year. They've been getting to the free throw line a lot more after being last in the NBA in that category last season. Think of how many games the Bulls kind of choked away in the fourth quarter last season. Now they're one of the best fourth quarter teams in the league, and they've got a guy in DeMar DeRozan who, as a closer, he's leading the NBA in or at least when he went out, was leading the NBA in just about every fourth quarter scoring category you could imagine. And it's just been phenomenal, like a really stabilizing presence for a team that has a guy who's capable in those situations in Zach LaVine, but now to have two guys like that and have a guy who's as battle tested as DeRozan is, you can really see the impact of that. So when they're at full strength, I think all that stuff has been impressive. Defensively, a lot of people question them, but they've really established a style of play on that side of the floor. Pretty versatile. They play small, but they get a lot of steals. They get out on the fast break. That fuels a lot of their offense. Obviously, Caruso and Lonzo Ball have been a huge part of that. So that's been impressive. And then, Lakeena, to your point on the on the resilience that they showed against Denver, I think they've had a lot of quality wins like that where the odds have been stacked against them, and they've kind of pushed the tide back and been impressively resilient. At the same time, I think that adds to Billy Donovan's frustration and not wanting to make excuses after they get wiped off the floor by Cleveland on Wednesday. As shorthanded as this team is, and honestly, this is a little bit refreshing about this group, even though they're not going to win every game. As shorthanded as this team is, they still aren't a group because of the ceiling that they've shown. They're not a group that's willing to make excuses when they do have a game that a lot of people, and maybe rightfully so, would be willing to make excuses for, like that Cleveland game. They were disappointed with the way they played. And Billy even said, what we showed against Denver shows me that I should expect more of this group than what we saw against the Cavs. So even that in and of itself is a change from the rebuilding years when, excuses can fly at anywhere. And, it's a young team. It's a developing team. Who knows what we'll be able to accomplish. This group is very serious-minded, and they've shown the ceiling of an Eastern Conference contender. And really on both ends of the floor have been really impressive, especially in their versatility in a way that they haven't been in years past.
Rob Schaffer from NBC Sports Chicago, who covers the Chicago Bulls, is joining us live here and live on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakeena here with you. We're live and in living color. If you have a question for Rob, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your question or comment. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. Rob, let's go. You mentioned head coach Billy Donovan, and that was going to be my next question for you. Me and Lakeena talked about this on our last couple of episodes, including last week when they swept the New York City series, as we called it, beating the Nets and beating the Knicks last Thursday. Billy Donovan has set the tone. We talked about this a little bit last year too when we had you on. He set the tone, especially defensively. He didn't have the roster like he does this year, obviously, but I like the tone that he set for this team. Yes, offense comes and goes. Whoever's in there are expected to do their part, but defensively, if you're not doing your job, you're coming off the floor, and I love that. Talk to us about the impact that head coach Billy Donovan has made on this team, especially defensively, because I love it personally.
Yeah, and offensively, they have improved relative to the rest of the league, and obviously have a ton of scoring talent. So they're always going to, have a pretty high floor on that end of the floor. But I think Billy's on the court most, impactful kind of impact on this team this year has been defensively. You see why he's coached more seasons than not in the NBA, top 10 defenses. Obviously, in Oklahoma City, he had pretty good personnel. When you talk about guys like Kevin Durant, he had Steven Adams in the front court there. He had Serge Ibaka, was a pretty great shot blocker in his prime. Like, he had good, Andre Robertson, he had good personnel there, but it was also at the same time kind of ever-changing personnel. So the fact that they were consistently, a top tier of the league defensive team while he was there every season should tell you something about just his ability to coach defense at the NBA level. The Bulls last year, as much as they struggled at the point of attack and had moments where things looked pretty poor, especially in pick and roll coverage, still finished 12th in defensive rating. This year, they've climbed even farther. I actually don't know what they are as of today, but have been floating between 5 to 10, but mostly in that kind of 5 to 6 range for most of the season. And for him to have elicited the buy-in that he has out of this group, obviously, Ball and Caruso, as we were talking about, have had a huge impact. But even to just build a really strong defensive unit around two guards, two perimeter players, I think is a pretty impressive thing that, it just isn't seen as much in the NBA anymore. Most of the great defenses you think of are built around kind of these all-encompassing rim protecting big men, your Rudy Gobert's, your Joel Embiid's, things like that. So Billy, the thing that he's done, he came in with a pretty cohesive game plan from the start of the season, which was, we're going to switch a lot. We're going to be very aggressive. We're going to try to generate steals, deflections, getting passing and driving lanes. He knew he had the personnel to do that. So that has borne out. He's gotten the team to really buy into competing hard on the defensive end every night, which in the NBA over the course of an 82 game regular season, honestly gives you an advantage over a lot of teams if you're just willing to, be giving 100% every night, almost no matter what. So he's certainly drawn that out of this group. And yeah, just the kind of the tone that he's set really even since last year when the results weren't as good, with giving constructive criticism, challenging players, but doing it in a respectful way. He always gets talked about as a great communicator. So I think, there was reason maybe to be a little bit critical of Billy last season when the results didn't live up to the trade and, he missed the play and everything like that. But this season, I think he's proven to be the perfect guiding hand for this team, not to mention all the stuff he's had to deal with this COVID stuff, remaking his rotations on the fly, seemingly every game. It's been a pretty good coaching performance from him this season, and I think it's justifiable. Like, I don't know when we get to the point of talking about Coach of the Year candidacy, over the course of an NBA season, but he'll be one of the top candidates for that award when that conversation does start.
Absolutely. Sid's talked about it multiple times. I've seen other, Bulls Twitter talk about it. The interior defense of the Bulls, you can probably say, is their one glaring weakness. Are there names, being floated around that could perhaps maybe kind of help out in that? They're not going to get Rudy Gobert, obviously, but are there, what other, unfortunately, Boogie Cousins, unfortunately, he's now in Milwaukee. So there goes my dream of him becoming a Bull. But what are names that you think that are like the Bulls are looking at?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Like, I think the popular names on the trade market right now are, like, take the two Indiana guys that are out there right now, which has been reported by The Athletic, is like they're actually, listening to calls for them. So that's a legitimate two guys to think about. I just wonder and I'm obviously talking about Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner. Both of those guys are terrific players that have improved year over year. Sabonis, a two-time All-Star. Turner is one of the best rim protectors in the league. Where I struggle with the Bulls fit is, one, they're both, to me at least, they're both at their best when they're playing the five. The Bulls have a five in Nikola Vucevic, who, by all accounts is going to be around for a while and is a big part of how this team is constructed. So I just wonder about that fit, bringing in players of that caliber, and I just don't know if they fit next to Vooch. In addition to that, just with the caliber of players that those are, the Bulls basically from an asset perspective, or, who are they throwing around in the trade? A Kobe White, a Troy Brown Jr., a Derek Jones Jr., these are players that have potential and in the eye of the right team, are possibly intriguing. But with that and, the Portland first round pick that they own that's lottery protected, it's not like the deepest trove of assets to be able to hand out in a trade. So I'm not even sure that they have enough to get a guy like a Sabonis or Turner. So I address those guys because they're kind of the popular names out there right now. For me, and this is something that's still a couple months maybe away, my eyes will be really fixated on the buyout market for this team because they are a team that is contending right now. They're near the top of the conference. Those are the types of teams that are usually the most attractive to kind of veteran guys that maybe weren't able to be traded at the deadline, that get bought out. This is purely speculative. Like, it's not based on any information, but one name that I have looked at just because he's on a team that's underperforming in Sacramento, if he were to get bought out at some point, I think he'd be a pretty good fit, to come off the bench and provide some depth for this Bulls team, is Tristan Thompson. That's a name that I've said and have just kind of, again, it's not based on anything, but it's just my own opinion that he would be a great fit. And it's logical to think, okay, maybe if this Kings thing really implodes, he could be a guy that gets bought out and it's just kind of floating out there. I mean, his rebounding, even defensively, I know he's getting up there in age a little bit, but he's always been a guy that can, do a couple different things defensively, be versatile for a five-man. So there's a name that I've thought about that seems realistic. Really, the trade market, because the deadline is still so far away, I think there's still a lot of different twists and turns. Like who's available right now aren't the only people that are going to end up being out there. So with the Bulls, with the assets that they have, I think being patient is the right approach. But yeah, I think if they could swing a trade for an above average power forward and then bring in on a buyout, like you're talking about, like a Boogie Cousins level, like a Tristan Thompson level, like backup big to help on the glass and maybe defend the paint a little bit. Now you're looking at a team that, is not just a contender, but maybe at the forefront of contention, given what they've been able to accomplish already this season, even with the flaws that they have.
Rob Schaffer from NBC Sports Chicago, who covers the Bulls for that great company, is joining us here on Second City Sports Live and in Living Color. Sid Lakeena here with you. Rob, let's talk about Bulls rookie from Morgan Park, Chicago's very own Ayo Dosunmu. Of course, he's played in almost in every game this year. He's been a star of these last few games due to various injuries and protocols. Of course, he's averaging 6 points a game, under 18 minutes a game. Talk about his impact on this Bulls team. Me personally, I said this before the season started, that with Kobe White, before he got back into the COVID protocols, any playing time through the first couple of months of the year, I thought they was going to serve this young man going for this season and perhaps on the stretch run on the drive towards the playoffs. Talk about Ayo's impact on this team so far.
Yeah, and you mentioned his averaging 6 points a game, and he's been shooting the ball probably a little bit better than a lot of people expected, but the stats don't even tell the whole story with Ayo, man, because he's just, from day one, even when he wasn't really in the rotation, in the minutes that he would get, his energy defensively and the way that he just kind of has this poise on the court that you just wouldn't necessarily expect from a rookie. It was always impressive, in the preseason to the beginning of the regular season when he wasn't quite in the rotation. No matter, really from the beginning, Billy specifically, and I talk a lot about, Billy and Ayo being kind of this match made in heaven coach and player, because Billy just seems to really love coaching him. Billy has talked a lot from the beginning about how he's a guy who can receive and improve based on constructive criticism. I think that's a big quality for a young player to have. He's a guy that obviously, from a competitiveness perspective, plays hard on the defensive end, gets through screens, like guards above his size, gets deflections, gets steals. He's a really, really good transition player already just because of his speed and his finishing ability. So he's been useful in that respect. And he's really just improved so much in these, 3-4 months since Summer League. Look at his first NBA start, that Denver game. He played 42 minutes, which is on its own pretty unbelievable. Had 8 assists, and I thought his offensive decision-making, his ability to find guys, was much improved from where it was at the beginning of the season. His finishing ability, I think you could say the same thing about it. He gets up for these big games. He played really, really well in the second Nets win. His season high scoring total was in the first Nets win. He had 15 points at that game at the United Center, hits big shots. Just really, it's a cliche to say, but he just really does feel like he's affecting winning plays and winning basketball every time he's on the floor. And for the Bulls to have found him at 38th, you couldn't have asked for anything more. When you talk about second round picks, and obviously at this point, we can pretty safely say he should have never been a second round pick in the first place. But in the moment, when you are making second round picks, I think the perception is a lot of these guys are kind of crapshoots. And if you can get a guy that's 10 to 15 minutes, solid a game and is a decent rotation player, that's a pretty positive outcome for a second round pick. But Ayo has kind of already been more than that in a lot of ways. And obviously at 21 years old, and if this is where he is already, there's a lot of potential moving forward too. So he's been a great pickup. I don't, it was questionable what his role was going to look like coming into the season because the Bulls backcourt is so deep, but he was breaking into the rotation even when they were fully healthy. Now he's obviously been a key factor with all the guys out, but even when the team is fully healthy again, I don't see how you can't run this kid out there for 20 minutes a night. He just brings too much. He just brings too much when he's out there to not. And I think that's a big testament for him that he's improved this much this early in his NBA career.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about the NBA as a whole, Rob. Now, who's impressed you so far, whether it's team or Steph? Well, you can't say Steph because that you can't say that. So we all.
I've got one off the beaten path. And it'll tie into the Bulls a little bit. This Cavs team has really defied my expectations. I think the expectations of a lot of people. The fact that they're a 7 to 8 seed, potentially look like they could even be outside of the play-in. Mobley was just one of the best players on the floor in the Bulls game. Obviously, he gets talked about as a generational defensive player. You can see that already. Offensively, he's pretty fluid and impressive. Jared Allen playing like an all-star. Darius Garland making a leap in his third year. I think they're a really cool story. They're a frisky, fun, young team. Who knows where it goes from here or how the rest of the season plays out for them. But it is always cool to see those fun young teams make a little bit of a jump. I know that there's the baked in thing for the Bulls that they were very shorthanded, but I think you got to give Cleveland credit too, because they are clearly a good team, a very, very, very good defensive team. that's been beating, a lot of quality opponents so far this season. So they have really impressed me in the division of the, outside of the Suns going on however long of a winning streak they went on, and Steph being the runaway MVP. Like, there's a lot of, fun story. The Bucks are making their charge back after they dealt with a lot of injuries at the beginning of the season. But off the beaten path a little bit, I think Cleveland, I've kind of looked at them from afar from a lot of the season and watched a couple games and seen the record and been like, man, that's pretty impressive compared to where expectations were. And then seeing them live on Wednesday, it really confirmed a lot of that, because again, as much as the Bulls were depleted, they really took it to them in a lot of respects. And they looked like not necessarily a contending team, but a pretty darn solid young team that who knows where they go from here. They're certainly off to, for the first time this century without LeBron in a Cavs uniform, they at least have some interesting pieces there. And it looks like they could head in a positive direction. So shout out to them for that.
Couple more minutes with our good friend Rob Schaffer from NBC Sports Chicago. He covers the Bulls for that great media company right here on Second City Sports Live and in living color. Sid, Lakeena here with you. Rob, let's go back to DeMar DeRozan. Of course, he's under COVID protocols, but I was listening to a national podcast. I think it's over a month old now, and this program, the host of this program, brought up the fact that DeRozan could be a dark horse candidate for early season MVP. Of course, Steph is clearly the number one candidate. Now, Bulls fans, not all, but some Bulls fans who just watch Bulls basketball will say DeMar DeRozan should be number 2. Me personally, I think he's a number 3 candidate for MVP. Sure. Where do you place DeMar as far as early season candidate for MVP?
Well, this is actually interesting because today, and I want to shout out Tim Bontemps over at ESPN. He does something a couple times a year where he will poll media members. He'll try to kind of like recreate as close to what an MVP end of season poll in terms of the voting body would look like. And he kind of polls them at different points throughout the year to see who people think the MVP is at different points in the year. That poll, which just came out today, and people should go check it out on ESPN.com, had DeMar DeRozan 6th, which I think is fair. I mean, again, like you said, Bulls fans are going to have who watch them night in and night out and see the impact he's had of this team are going to have a certain opinion of him. But the guys in front of him, obviously Steph is the runaway favorite. KD right up there too. I don't think there's any way you could argue with those two at the top. And then kind of in that mid tier where I think DeRozan falls in like the 3 to 6 range, you have Giannis, who the Bucks are coming on and he's doing all the Giannis stuff that he normally does on both ends of the floor. Jokic, who's having another historic season, especially on the offensive end of the floor. And Chris Paul, who's been the best player and, is averaging 15 and 10. Like, it's not as if his numbers are anything to scoff at. And having, him and DeRozan, I think in terms of like veteran impact that you can quantify on and off the court are a little bit similar, except, Chris Paul's obviously on a Suns team that is even in a higher tier of contention than the Bulls are. So I see DeRozan in that kind of, 3 to 6 range with that group of guys. Obviously he's going to have to come back from COVID and kind of, we'll see how that looks. I mean, I don't know much about the nature of like DeRozan's protocol entry or anything like that, but I know a lot of guys who have had to come back from protocol. Sometimes guys hit the ground running. Sometimes there's a little bit of a curve coming back. So we'll see how the rest of his season looks. But to me, he's certainly been the Bulls MVP. I think he's right up there on the fringe of kind of that 3 to 5 range around the league. And man, like think about that compared to what the expectations for this team from a lot of people were coming into the offseason. He's been just everything the Bulls could have asked for and more. So for him to be in that conversation already, very, very impressive. And to me, pretty deserved when you look at his scoring, being top 5 in the league, obviously fourth quarter scoring, he's first. He's getting to the foul line, I think at a rate that is second in the NBA. He's just been really phenomenal in a lot of different respects.
And no one liked the signing either. Remember, all the national pundits were saying it was the worst signing in the NBA free agency. But that's another discussion for another time. Last question for me, Rob. What do you think the ceiling is for the Bulls? They're right there, the number 2 seed right now as of December 10th. We're recording this. What do you think? Can they stay right there? Can they compete with the Nets and the Bucks for the number 1 seed? Are they kind of like in the middle of the pack? What's the ceiling for the Bulls, do you think?
Yeah, I think regular season and playoffs are different. Right now, I think this is a team that could very well host a first-round playoff series and be, a top 3 or 4 seed in the East, regular season-wise. Playoff-wise, I think what's going to be interesting is seeing how the matchups break out, because this is a team where, they've beaten the Nets twice and both have been pretty impressive wins. I'd like to see them just with how small they play. I'd like to see them against a team like the Bucks. Obviously, they've lost to the Sixers twice this year. That's another team that I think poses a difficult matchup for them. So it's hard for me to gauge their playoff ceiling without knowing kind of what types of matchups they would have to go through in the postseason. But, in a vacuum, I think this is a team that is, one of the better 3 or 4 teams in the East in terms of contending to make it out of the East. And that being said, with the trade conversation we were having earlier, I don't think there's any guarantee that this is even what the team looks like at the end of the regular season. Like this front office has been so aggressive in making talent upgrades to this team. And they were doing that before the Bulls had really shown that they were a team worth doing that for. Like they were doing that when this team had missed the play-in, and even dating back to the trade deadline last year when they were kind of a couple games under 500. Now that this team has shown a ceiling of being one of the top teams in the East and is 17-9, you can only imagine how aggressively they're working the lines and probably trying to make whatever types of improvements with the assets that they have that they can make. So I'll put that as a top 3 or 4 team in the East as my answer for now, but I reserve my right to change that if there are improvements made, because it wouldn't surprise me at all if if the front office at some point makes a move, no matter how big or how small, that's going to address another one of these kind of weaknesses that have popped up for this team. So we'll see how that goes over the course of the season.
Last question from me, Rob. Nikolai Vucevic, as you brought up the trade deadline from last year. Of course, he was a key player that AK and Mark Eversley acquired last year from Orlando. Of course, he started off the season slow, caught fire, caught a COVID. Now it looks like now that he's back, he had 2 monster games in a row. I know he had a double-double the other night in that blowout loss against Cleveland. Do you think that Vucevic is finally has turned the corner and can show that all-star type talent?
Yeah, it looked that way in New York, for sure. But even with the double-double against Cleveland, 8 of 23 shooting, 1 of 7 from 3. And after the game, I mean, he was frustrated just at, I think he was 3 of 13 in the first half of that game from the field. And he was frustrated at some of the misses that he was having on really open looks that guys were finding him for. And, he was frustrated with himself just for, not making those shots. And, the game kind of slips away from the Bulls from there. So I think it's certainly a good sign that he's had a couple dominant games since he's been back from COVID, but now it's kind of gone from a full out slump to maybe it's just kind of inconsistent from Vooch. Maybe that's the word for it. It's up and down. And especially with DeRozan out, as much as, 18 and 12 is great and his screen setting, and I think his defense has been better than a lot of people expected to be this year. His passing is pretty important for this team. He does a lot of subtle things like that positively impact this group. But for this team to reach its ceiling, and I think we saw kind of what the ceiling could look like in New York in those Knicks and Nets wins. For this team to reach its peak ceiling, he needs to really come along as a scorer and get back to the efficiency that he's had at earlier parts of his career, especially when he's an all-star. Vooch even said that's something that he has taken pride in throughout his career, and it just hasn't been there this year. Even with those 2 monster games, I think he's at 41% shooting and 34 from 3 this year, which is just below the standard that he's set for himself. So moving forward, I think the efficiency really, really needs to come up on a consistent basis. Obviously, for this team to reach its ceiling in the long term, but especially in the short term, if they're without DeMar DeRozan for another couple games, to not have that surefire secondary scoring option next to Zach LaVine could really hurt this team. So, we'll see how Vooch is able to bounce back against Miami tomorrow. He's a vet. He's been around forever. And like I said, he's established a standard of play over the last few years. So I still think there's reason for confidence that he'll figure it out. But at this point, I think inconsistent is the right word for it. And he's got to find a way to iron it out. All
right. That was Rob Schaffer, who covers the Bulls for NBC Sports Chicago. You can follow him on Twitter at Rob_Shafe. That's once again Rob_Shafe. You can don't forget to download the My Teams app and search for NBC Sports Chicago. You can read his articles there. Mr. Schaffer, thank you very much for joining us once again on the program today. Thanks for making your debut. This is our live show now. As you know, anything goes, and you did a great job, my man. So keep up the great work. We'll have you on again throughout the season.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure.
Happy holidays, take care. And stay safe.
You too.
Once again, that was Rob Schaffer from NBC Sports Chicago. He covers the Chicago Bulls. He does a great job. As I mentioned before, download that My Teams app. You can read his articles there. Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2 straight ahead. More sports and more fun as Second City Sports continues with our Bears and Packers preview and our NFL Week 14 NFL picks with Christine Manika and a whole lot more. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Kane sets up the slot, Seth Jones put up inside the net. They score! Jonathan Taves with his first goal of the season, standing right behind the Canadian crease and redirecting that shot off of Seth Jones' stick. It's a power play goal and the first goal this season for the captain.
The action on the Blackhawks radio network, 2-0 the final over the Canadians last night. 30 saves in net from Marc-Andre Fleury as the Hawks improved to 10-14-2. The Hawks with wins in 2 of 3 back to work tomorrow night at Toronto, back home on Monday night against the Flames. Justin Fields on target to start this Sunday night as the Bears take on the Packers. Green Bay a perfect 5-0 at home. The Packers 9-3 this season. The Bears are 4-8. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Shop styles up to 70% off at Gap Factory and gapfactory.com. Don't forget to combine it with your Gap Cash. Save more through December 9th at Gap Factory and gapfactory.com.
It takes 2 vaccines to help protect you this season, the flu and COVID-19. And now you can get both shots at the same visit. Learn more at cdc.gov/vaccines.
You need an accurate thermometer to check for fever, a potential sign of flu or COVID. Be vigilant and contact your medical provider at the first sign of fever. Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer has been proven accurate in more than 100 clinical studies. Exergen Temporal Scanners are available at Walmart and other fine retailers. Learn more at Exergen.com. That's EXERGEN.com. Exergen is changing the way the world takes temperature.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of the Hashtag Football Friday. We're live and in living color right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee, which is she. I ain't Cindy Brown. That is me, folks. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at CK80. Once again, it's CK80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80. Excuse me.
Easy for you to say. You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app. You can catch any of our live shows, including this one, Second City Sports. If you miss it, you can go back to listen to them at your own leisure. Follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms and follow War Media once again at all social media platforms. There's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You have a question or comment for us, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago on Facebook or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. But if you decide to do something silly, stupid, or dumb, Lakeena will give you the city of Glendale, Arizona treatment and give you the boot.
Bye-bye.
I love saying that. Speaking of giving folks the boot, the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers will get it on once again on prime time. I know. Lakeena's giving that groan. The 4-8 Bears will travel to Green Bay to take on the 9-3 Packers. That's this Sunday night at 7:20 p.m. on NBC Central Standard Time. Lakeena, I wish Snoop Dogg was doing this game. No disrespect to Chris Collins or Al Michaels, but I wish Snoop Dogg was doing this game. I think it's going to be potentially a mess like it was a year ago. If you go back in history, 2014, remember that when Mark Trestman got their heads blown off, 55 to I believe it was 22 or something like that, and Chris Collinsworth commented at the end of the game. I felt sorry for Mark Trestman, and it turned out that was a dumb comment. But regardless of the fact, let's go back to today. Green Bay is playing well right now. They're battling Arizona for the top seed in the NFC playoffs. Remember, folks, it's only the top seed is going to get a first round bye, not the top 2 anymore with that extra team in the playoffs. Lakeena, taking a look at the numbers for both these teams coming into Sunday night's game. Let's go with the team rankings on offense. The Bears are 3rd worst in the NFL in total offense, while the Packers rank 16th. In total defense, the Bears are 8th, while the Packers are 6th. The Packers defense has been playing well, especially over this last month or so. In passing, the Bears are ranked dead last. The Packers ranked at 10th. And in rushing, the Bears are number 9, and the Packers are checking in at number 21. Lakeena, it's going to come down to, can you put pressure on Aaron Rodgers, not commit any dumb penalties, get some turnovers? And on the offensive side for the Bears, can you take a page out of the New England playbook and run the damn ball 35 plus times? Do you think that this team are competent of doing that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna keep this preview short because I really don't want to talk about this game, and
But we
like,
have
in fact,
to.
I know we have to, but you know we're gonna keep it short, 10 to 15
Right.
minutes at most. But you know, I see the guys on Get Up try to talk about this. You know, do the whole comment in the first meeting, like, the Bears. You know, and of course Aaron Rodgers saying, the Bears, I own you. I guess they needed something to talk about because the game's probably gonna end up sucking anyway. But
Yeah.
look, here's the thing for me. For me, I think, look, this is, I think, the key. Can they run the ball? I mean, they did actually did
Mhm.
pretty well stopping the run. The Packers have, in their first meeting, I believe. I think that was one of the first games that David Montgomery didn't play. So
Mhm.
it's one of those things where I guess they were able to, stop the run. And then look, I'm kind of at that point where they're gonna have some of their guys back. David Bakhtiari, who was on IR, he might be back. Jair Alexander could be back. Zarius Smith, probably not. Probably not Zarius Smith. I mean, he's probably going to be.
Mhm.
It's probably gonna be another week before he can come back. But they're getting healthy. The Packers are. Look, as for the Bears, it looks like, Justin Fields will start. I mean, he had 100. He threw for 174 yards and a touchdown. Threw an interception though in the first meeting with the Packers. It was kind of a slow start, if you guys remember. The Bears,
Mhm.
kept the ball moving in the first quarter. Although the Packers kind of woke up, I guess, and kind of kicked into gear. So I'm not gonna sit here and say it's gonna be a blowout, but I apologize to NBC and to the rest of the nation because they got to endure the Bears for the next 2 weeks. So I can I can only give you so much depth with that. But I mean, look, yeah, can the Bears win the game? Of course they can. I mean, we've seen it. They got someone said they had a 3% chance. I mean, hey, 3% is better than 0. So hey, that's fine. But I think, look, for me, I think, look, if you give it to David Montgomery, let him run the ball, keep Aaron Rodgers and them off the field, but you can probably do that. You can probably keep yourself in the game. And we saw what happened in the Cardinals game. I mean, that Cardinals game probably could have been completely one-sided had not been for David Montgomery kind of keeping the ball moving. But look, the Packers still have
Mhm.
a lot to play for. I mean, they're 9-3. They're right behind Arizona for the number 1 seed in the NFC, so they still got a lot to play for. So they're going to be ready. And and Matt LaFleur, I believe, is like 9 and like 3 or something like that in the month of December. So he knows how to play in December. And remember, Aaron Rodgers is also 22-5 against the Bears.
Mhm.
So I'm just like, you know what? He does own you. So sorry, he does, but
And speaking of Packers head coach Matt LaFleur, did you check out his comments from yesterday? He said that this game is they're treating it as another bye week. If that doesn't tell you anything, I don't know what does. I didn't get angry at it personally, but
where's
if
where's
you're
the
the Bears,
lie?
if you need that to psych you up, so be it. But the truth's been ugly in your face all season long. I'm just saying.
I mean, okay, well, where's the lie? Where that's the rest of us real? I mean, Detroit even kind of covered it in the Thanksgiving Day game with Detroit. Okay, and if you need that to motivate you, okay, fine, whatever. But where's the lie in what he said? But I'm sure he'll have his guys ready. I'm sure Aaron will have, A-Rod will have
Mhm.
his guys ready. They're not gonna kind of like be lackadaisical about it. I think they know they still got a lot to play for. They got a not a tough schedule, but they know they got to treat every game like because they're trying to get that 1
Mhm.
seed. So they're not going to treat this with kid gloves. So I think they're not going to just drag along. So I think that they'll be ready for this game. And look, I mean, can Justin Fields? I mean, it's going to be very cold at Lambeau.
Mhm.
So we got to think that's going to be an issue too. I mean, how will he look with cracked ribs? Come back from cracked ribs. I mean, that's a tough injury to come back from.
Yeah.
The defense, I mean, yes, Roquan Smith can only do so much. I mean, Max done for the year. Hicks has been banged up. That O line for the Bears. I mean, I mean, people forget that defense for Green Bay is actually pretty solid. So
Yeah.
to say that maybe they may treat what you call like a rag doll. I mean, I don't know, but you're in front of a national television audience. They're not going to want the Packers are not going to want to make fools of themselves. But look at that comment that Matt LaFleur made. If they give you motivation, whatever. But it's not going to really make much difference.
I'll say this as we wrap up our Bears Packers preview portion of the segment. Going back to the first meeting of the season, Lakeena, we gave the Bears credit. They were in it until Aaron Rodgers scored that touchdown, rushing touchdown that basically put that game away. The Bears had a good game plan. As you mentioned, David Montgomery missed that first game due to an injury. Khalil Herbert, along with the Bears offensive line, did a heck of a job keeping Aaron Rodgers on the field and the Green Bay defense honest. But Justin Fields, he was starting to get his feet wet and he didn't have it together. But the Bears were still in the game because of their defense of running the football. The question is, can they follow the same game plan? I'm not sure, but they're going to have to come pretty damn close to it in order to pull off an upset. This is why you play the games. But I'm with you, Lakeena. I'm more pessimistic than anything going into Sunday night. As we said before, I'm looking for performances from individual players as the Bears wrap up this 2021 season, because this is not a playoff team. They're not going to the playoffs, and it's all about next year and perhaps a new coaching staff that's going to come in here at Hallis Hall.
Yeah, I mean they're 4-8. They're not in the hunt. I know some people want to say, well, the Bears are still in it, mathematically. Okay, you must be bad at math because that doesn't mean anything. But like I said before, I mean, look, this is sort of the good, finish at the contracts, finish out their contracts. They're going to have more money, to spend next year. Allen Robinson, I'm sure he's going to want to, I'm sure he's going to make a go at it. I'm sure he's going to want to, show himself off to, his next teams. I'm sure he's going to try and play Sunday night, I'm sure, but it's not really going to really make much difference. I mean, look, like I said before,
check with his agent on Twitter.
Well, yeah, that's exactly. I know he's made some pretty interesting comments, but yeah, I mean, look, for me, that this, look, can the Bears keep it close? Sure. Can they win? I mean, oh yeah, of course. I mean, we've seen weird things happen in the NFL this last month, so anything can happen. But again, it's all about the execution, and you got the Packers coming off a bye, and I think they know that. Look, there's still, of course, this is a rivalry game. Of course, the Bears are gonna put their best foot forward, and fight and play at their best. But again, you're the more superior team. Play like it, and I think the Packers will, unfortunately.
You listen to Second City Sports Live and in living color on the hashtag Football Friday edition, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. That was our Bears Packers preview. Lakeena, we beat it by a couple of minutes, so we kept it short, precise, and clean. I have a confession to make as we review last night's Thursday night football contest between the Minnesota Vikings and the Pittsburgh Steelers, or as some of you young folks would say, Steelers. But it's Steelers. Read the name, pronounce it correctly. Thank you. The Minnesota Vikings keep their playoff hopes alive with a 36-28 victory. Minnesota led this game 29-0 through three quarters. Pittsburgh made a charge in the fourth quarter. It came up short as Harrison Smith knocked down the pass intended for the Steelers tight end at the end there. Lakeena, before I get to my confession, I'll give out the numbers from the winning team. Kirk Cousins didn't have the greatest game, but he had a decent game with 216 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. My guy, Justin Jefferson, had a good game with 7 catches, 79 yards in the first score of the game. KJ Osborne had 3 catches, 83 yards in the score. But Dalvin Cook returned from injury. He missed last week's game against the Detroit Lions. Dalvin Cook came back with 27 carries, 205 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He looks great, Lakeena. And this Minnesota team, we talked about it all year long. They're inconsistent. They're a good team when everything is going well, but when things are not going well, everything hits the fan. But their defense, especially last night with Kendricks returning. They said, Kendricks returning last night. They said Ben Roethlisberger 5 times.
Yeah, and that's what kind of helped them. And look, Cook, and despite he was still banked up with that shoulder injury, he finished with 205 rushing yards, tied for the 3rd most against the Steelers in NFL history. So that's a big accomplishment there. Eric Kendricks, like you said, he had a sack and led the team in tackles. Harrison Smith, also coming back, he also had a sack. He also knocked that ball down from Pat Freiermuth's hands. You wonder, like, okay, where the heck you wish he had been there for that, that game against the Lions. Maybe they, the Lions wouldn't have won that game and they'd be 7-7 instead of 6-7. But I think, look, the Vikings still have a shot. I mean, they're still right there in the hunt. I mean, they play the Bears next Monday night, so you got to think that they got a tough schedule though. Of course, they go against the Rams, at the Packers, and of course, 2 of the last 4, including next Monday night, it will be against the Bears. So they have a shot at perhaps maybe kind of finishing up at maybe perhaps at 9-7. But if you're Minnesota, you're kicking yourselves because you had a couple of bad losses there. You probably right there in the playoffs right now. I had those bad losses, including that one against Detroit.
Yeah, so the Vikings are checking in at 6-7, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are 6-1 on the year. Joining us right now for KXRB, we're gonna have her for the entire hour. Our buddy from Chicago, Christine, aka the Queen Manika. You can follow her at @Manika_KXRB on the Twitter. Christine, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I gotta be honest. We're in a storm right now, a snowstorm. So pretty much since my show ended, I've been working from home for the last couple of hours. My car isn't what it used to be, let me tell you, to get in the snow. But we're probably going to get around 8 inches of snow here in Sioux Falls. So it's just crazy. And I heard that, in the Chicago area, you guys are getting like a warm snap. So
yeah,
lucky. Consider yourself lucky.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
Speaking of Minnesota, we were talking about the Vikings, Lakeena. They're going to get some snow too tonight into tomorrow as well. So we're lucky. So I know we're going to get some snow at some point, probably next month. But
not
hopefully
it's going to get in here.
yeah. Hopefully it doesn't get a storm like yours, Christine. But I was watching the Weather Channel this morning. I said I'm gonna bring it up with Christine. I was like, I saw some snow at Sioux Falls, so I was like, we'll bring that up with her, but you brought it up early, so there's that.
It's not some snow; it's a lot of snow.
Yeah. So, we're getting to the winter season, so everybody be careful out there and just take it easy. You're listening to Second City Sports Live in living color on #Football Friday right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, Lakeena, and Christine are with you. Christine, I'm glad we brought you in because as I was bringing up with Lakeena reviewing last night's Minnesota win over the Steelers, I have a confession to make, but hopefully it doesn't kill me. I think I brought it up last week. I'm in the fantasy football playoffs in my league. I made it winning the last game of the year. I'm at 4-8. I had an upset last week. And this week, if I win this game, I'll be playing in my championship game in my league next week. Ooh. And I had 2 players. Actually, I was supposed to have. I had 3 players involved in last night's game, but I only could play 2. I played Justin Jefferson, the wide receiver from Minnesota, but I started Alexander Mattison, the backup running back, instead of Dalvin Cook. Now, I was on my way to work, and I heard that Dalvin Cook was going to play. But I'm a thinking man. Sometimes when you think too much, you outthink yourself. I'm guilty of that sometimes. But I didn't think that head coach Mike Zimmer would give Dalvin Cook the rock, and I didn't think that show was going to hold up, especially with Minnesota coming off a short week. So yours surely had Dalvin Cook on his bench and Justin Jefferson in the game. So I said, I hope me not putting Dalvin Cook in my lineup will hurt me. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope it doesn't come to bite me in the you-know-what.
No, I don't think so. It was a really good win for Minnesota last night, too. Talk about having Dalvin Cook come back at the right time, the opportune time. I just think, ever since Big Ben made that announcement, quote-unquote, that this was going to be his last season probably as a Steeler, they're kind of going on a downward trend at the moment. Will they come back? Maybe, but I think their chances in the playoffs are looking slimmer and slimmer by the day. That's for sure.
Yeah, a couple of those losses, such as that loss against Detroit, last week. I mean, you got to think that that's going to come back to bite them in the butt, and it has. Now, again, there was a nice showing by Minnesota. Now, Pittsburgh, I mean, I don't know what to think about this Pittsburgh team. I mean, they had that tie against Detroit a few weeks back. I mean, can they perhaps maybe make a play at the playoffs? I don't know, but it's just crazy that Chase Claypool. I mean, people were making fun of him because he did that weird first down celebration that took 5 seconds off. I mean, he still had his shot to look. The Steelers still had a couple of chances to win that game, so I think people need to kind of give Claypool a break there, but. You can tell by Big Ben, he just wasn't very happy.
No, not at all. No.
Christine, let's get your thoughts as we shift over to college football. Of course, this is your first time being on after the college football playoff tournament is announced. Of course, you have Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, and you have Cincinnati. what do you think that's going to happen? I know the games are a couple more weeks away, but are you surprised, or this is what you expected with the 4 teams getting into the tournament?
All I can say is I told you about Alabama. I told you Saban's going to find a way. Like I just had a feeling because, there's a reason. I was talking about this with some coworkers this past week. There's a reason why a lot of the kids are going to schools like Alabama, LSU, stuff like that. Not only is it because of the coaches, but then you have the weather aspect involved in it too. But mainly, especially for Alabama, there's nothing outside of the Bama campus. You know what I mean? They're going there because of Nick Saban, because he brings those wins and he has those championships right underneath his big belt. That's for sure. Now, when it comes to schools like Michigan and Wisconsin and stuff like that, yeah, those are great schools. They're great schools in that conference, but they're not going to go there because it's cold. It's snowing. I don't care how many championships you win. They're just not going to go there because of the atmosphere, which is why when Alabama won, I wasn't surprised by it. I am disappointed in my Notre Dame that they didn't make it. I kind of wanted them to do a little kick in the butt to Brian Kelly and get it. But, being in the Fiesta Bowl, that's good for them too. I'm very excited to see what Marcus Freeman is going to do for Notre Dame because it's clear that he is a player's coach. And I think they like that about him. I saw something on Notre Dame saying that this is the new era. So they're going to be past Brian Kelly. Yeah, it may not be pretty under Marcus Freeman's belt at first, but give him some time to work with the players, especially during this Fiesta Bowl. It's a lot of pressure to all of a sudden be a head coach in the middle of a season. You know what I mean? When there's still a lot of work to be done. So I'm excited to see how the players are going to react to him. We already saw it based on the video of their excitement of him being named the head coach. So I think that kind of helps out the situation a little bit more in that regard too.
And let's not forget with the new NIL rule that the players can transfer anytime. We're not getting any playing time. Instead of waiting a year to play for that program, they can play basically right away.
The crazy part about that portal is the Nebraska quarterback.
Yes, Adrian Martinez,
you're going into your 7th year. Who cares if you're going to transfer out?
That's good. Yeah, that's
too. Everyone thinks Nebraska is so good. Like everyone in Nebraska, I'm sorry if you're a Nebraska fan, they just think the Cornhuskers are great. Like there's no other team better than Nebraska. I don't know if you guys have been out there. There's nothing outside of that campus. I remember driving through there when I was going on a trip to Colorado, and I'm looking at it, and I see the big N in the distance, and I said, this is it? It's a big campus in the middle of nowhere? So, again, that brings up my point saying why big players aren't going to schools like Nebraska, because they could be good. They just don't have the right players that are getting recruited or players that are attracted enough to not only the football program, but the aspects around it besides the school and outside of it.
Yeah, the rules.
It's also about the facilities as well.
Well, and also too, it's interesting that K-State, Cal. I mean, those are some of the schools that he's thinking about transferring to. I mean, good luck to him. I mean, like you said, this will be his 7th year, so I'm sure he's gonna want to. I'm sure he's gonna probably want to go somewhere where he can win. So we'll see what he does. We'll keep you guys updated on that. The college football awards were handed out yesterday. Bryce Young, the quarterback from Alabama, won a couple of awards. Won the best quarterback award. That's the Davey O'Brien Award, and the Maxwell Award, which is the best. Which is a player of the year. Now, there's only been one time that the player that did not win that award ended up winning the Heisman in the last 7 years. That was in 2018 when Tua won that award, but Kyler Murray ended up winning the Heisman. So your Heisman finalists, who are they? Well, it's Young, it's CJ Stroud from Ohio State. It's Kenny Pickett, the talented quarterback, senior quarterback from Pittsburgh. He actually won the John Unitas Award, the Golden Arm Award, and Aiden Hutchinson, who I think is the first time, like the last couple of years, as Chase Young did a couple of years ago, that a defensive guy, has been invited to be a finalist in the Heisman. Of course, he's from Hutchinson is from Michigan. Who you guys think will win that award?
You want to start, Sid, or do you want me
Yeah,
to
I'll just get out the way. It'll probably be that Bryce Young kid out of Alabama. I'm sorry. I don't know. It came to my mind, especially the way they finished out the year and the way they played against Georgia in the SEC title game. I can't see why now it will be him.
I would love to see not a quarterback getting the Heisman Award. I would like to see that the defensive player from Michigan get it. They've had, a great turnaround this season. And I think defense is a big part of the game. It's great to have offense. It's great. But the way to avoid the other team from winning is by having the defense stop them. So I'm rooting for that Michigan kid. I hope he gets it.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Aiden Hutchinson a lot. And look, don't be surprised if Kenny Pickett, especially with that that fake slide that since they've now outlawed thanks a lot NCAA against in the ACC championship game. I mean, he might look. I mean, he's been there for 5 years. He's got all the passing records. The school passing records that stood in some cases for 30, 40 years. So I would like to see him win it. Like I said before, I would love to see Hutchinson win it. He's been one of the reasons why Michigan's where they are right now. Him and Hassan Haskins and Cade McNamara who's a quarterback. So I think those three guys are the main reasons why Michigan's where they are. They're now in the playoff. The Army-Navy game is tomorrow. All the great pageantry. It's a great tradition. President Biden might be there too. His late son. Yeah, it looks like there have been rumors about it. Now, nothing's official yet, but I think there have been rumors that he's probably going to go to the games at East Rutherford this year, so he might make an appearance. Of course, his late son Bo was in the Army, so I'm sure that would be a great moment. Just to share with those young men should he decide to go. Of course, that's a definitive yet, but just the pageantry of that game. They get the spotlight to themselves when it comes to college football, since most of the games, the rest of the conference championship games and such are over with. So if you guys haven't get a chance, check it out. See, guys been doing it for the last 15, 20 years. So I watched it for years when it was on ABC. I grew up watching it. It just there's really nothing like it. So it's just a great moment. So if you guys haven't had, if you haven't watched college football this year, a football game this year, this could probably be the one you guys should watch. Just a thought.
Yeah, you're listening to Second City Sports right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, Lakeena, and Christine are here with you. Christine, let's go to basketball and talk about the Chicago Bulls. We had Rob Schaffer from NBC Sports Chicago on in our last segment. We talked about the issues going on with the team right now. 5 players on the COVID list. They play against the Miami Heat on the road in South Beach tomorrow night. They lost their game against Cleveland on Wednesday night. It's remarkable that this Bulls team, with all the I don't want to say turmoil, but with all the adversity, they still have a 17-9 record, one of the top records in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, it's amazing what a week can do. We were talking about last week how they were on their way to New York, and they're the kings of New York now. They could say that they own New York, unlike Aaron Rodgers saying that he owns the Bears. That's a little joke. But I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago when I said I really do trust the bench players on that team. There's a reason why the bench players are there. I think they're ultimately the playmakers, because if it wasn't for a good solid bench, the team wouldn't be where they are right now. Is it something to worry about that 5 players are on the COVID list? I mean, I guess, but there's a reason why, like I said, they have backups, and with this team, I wouldn't worry too much about it, in my opinion. I would worry more about the injuries, if anything.
Exactly. I think, and I'm glad this is happening now, whether it's in the middle of the season, going into the playoffs, that we really would be having issues. But you're absolutely right about that. Hold on, let me see if there's one more thing I wanted to ask you guys before we go to break. Speaking of Notre Dame, Christine, a couple of their top players. I mean, Kyle Hamilton, Kyron Williams, they're gonna skip their Fiesta Bowl matchup against Oklahoma State and go straight to the NFL draft, or preparing for the NFL draft, I should say. So what do you think about that? Because more and more players seem to be doing this.
It's not surprising, because I could see why players would do that and leave their bowl games early. And here's why. I don't think they want to risk injury. The market, what their whole franchise, I guess you can say, is their body. That's their moneymaker right there. And I don't think they want to have that risk of, hey, if I have a chance to go into the NFL, do I really want to risk an ACL injury, an MCL injury, whatever it is, for a bowl game. Now, going back to Notre Dame, a lot of great players have come out of Notre Dame in the NFL. The recent one I'll point out, Cole Kmet on the Bears. He's been just a monster. He's a tank. He's a tank out there for the position that he's in. And, there's a lot of great success that comes out of people leaving early to go pursue what they want to do. And if that's something that their heart is telling them to do, the worst thing that can happen to anyone that leaves early is being told no. That's the worst thing that can happen, in all honesty. There's always another opportunity to get back on the college field, but if they have a chance to go pro, I'd say go for it, and why take the risk?
All right. We hit the bottom of the hour. We have a quick timeout, but when we return, Christine will stay with us to give us her picks for Week 14 action in the National Football League. Of course, Lakeena is going to give our results from last week and our standings overall, and we'll have a whole lot more fun. You're listening to Hashtag Football Friday, live in living color on Second City Sports. Sid, Lakeena, Christina, right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Kane sets up the slot. Seth Jones put up inside the net. They score! Jonathan Taves with his first goal of the season, standing right behind the Canadian crease and redirecting that shot off of Seth Jones' stick. It's a power play goal and the first goal this season for the captain.
The action on the Blackhawks radio network, 2-0 the final over the Canadians last night. 30 saves in net from Marc-Andre Fleury as the Hawks improved to 10-14-2. The Hawks with wins in 2 of 3, back to work tomorrow night at Toronto, back home on Monday night against the Flames. Justin Fields on target to start this Sunday night as the Bears take on the Packers. Green Bay a perfect 5-0 at home. The Packers 9-3 this season. The Bears are 4-8. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Shop styles up to 70% off at Gap Factory and GapFactory.com. Don't forget to combine it with your Gap Cash. Save more through December 9th at Gap Factory and GapFactory.com.
It takes 2 vaccines to help protect you this season, the flu and COVID-19. And now you can get both shots at the same visit. Learn more at cdc.gov/vaccines.
You need an accurate thermometer to check for fever, a potential sign of flu or COVID. Be vigilant and contact your medical provider at the first sign of fever. Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer has been proven accurate in more than 100 clinical studies. Exergen Temporal Scanners are available at Walmart and other fine retailers. Learn more at Exergen.com. That's EXERGEN.com. Exergen is changing the way the world takes temperature.
Welcome back to Hashtag Football Friday, live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, Lakeena, and Christine here with you. This is our last segment of the week, last segment of the show. If you want to comment or have a question for us during our last segment, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago on Facebook or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. Now it's time for our Week 14 NFL picks. Lakeena, what's our results from last week and our standings overall?
Well, I know I'm in last now, so unfortunately I only had 7. I only had
now
7.
that's a shocker.
Yeah, I know. I only had 7 right last week. You, Christy, you officially passed me. So you're still up by 5. There's a 6-game gap between the 3 of us. So
wow.
still a few weeks left though. So let's not get discouraged. Now,
which team screwed you over last week, Lakeena?
There were a couple. I think the Buffalo. I think really, killed.
I picked New England. I was the only one.
I know.
Yeah.
You did. That's why you were able to. Yeah, that's why you were able to pass. I think there were a couple other losses. Who else lost that?
Cincinnati. I thought Cincinnati was going to win.
Yeah,
I had the Chargers. I told y'all, man.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there were a couple teams that kind of screwed me over. So yeah, that's why I'm now in last. But I'm not discouraged. So yeah, we got some good games here coming up this week. I believe this is the last of the bye weeks. Colts, Dolphins, Patriots, and Eagles are all on bye. So adjust your fantasy teams accordingly. Lee. And first off, with our Week 14 matchups, a good one here in the NFC East. You've got the Cowboys and Washington. Sid, you start this one for us.
Dallas and Washington. Head coach Mike McCarthy from Dallas said that he was going to guarantee that his team was going to win this game. Let's see here. Dallas leads the division. Washington's at 500. Dallas is favored by 5 points on the road. On a personal note, I got both their starting wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper on my fantasy team. They're better play well. But besides the point, that's besides the point. Dallas better get their running backs healthy, in particular Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. If they could do that and run the ball down Washington's throat, they'll be able to win the game. It's going to be a close game, as always is between these two rivals. I think Dallas is a better team this year. I know Dak Prescott didn't play in any of the games that they lost last year. Dak is back. I think this is going to be a turnaround game for him. So I'm going with Dallas on the road.
Yeah, a lot of people believe that this should have been the Sunday night matchup because Washington has really turned it around over the last couple of weeks. They're 6-6. Dallas is 8-4. It's a huge division game for them. Washington just had that thriller win against the Raiders. Then again, Dak is 7-1 with Washington, and I think that stat speaks for itself too. So theoretically wise, Dallas has been looking great this season. I'm going to go with Dallas for this one too.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Dallas too. I just think that the talent isn't there. They've got guys on IR. Washington does. There's just too many guys that are on IR for Washington. So I think that the Cowboys realize that if they want to keep up with the division, I think they need to win this game. So I'm going to pick the Cowboys. Although I wouldn't be surprised if look, we all know how Ron Rivera likes to motivate his guys. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do pull off the upset. Keeping it short and sweet here in the AFC South, you got the Jags and the Titans. Titans come off a bye. I think I'm going to pick the Titans in a handily. If they don't win this game, they got to keep up in the playoff chase. They're trying to get that 1 seed. So if they don't win this game, shame on them.
I'm going with the Titans too. Keep it straight and simple. No need to drag this one out anymore.
Right.
I'm going with the Titans as well. They're favored by 9.5.
All right. Short and sweet. I love when we can have games that we can just go zip right through. Seahawks, right? Seahawks and Texans. Davis Webb is your quarterback for the rest of the season for the Texans. I don't think it's going to matter. The noon game, okay, yeah, I don't think it's going to matter for the Seahawks either. I think they're going to try to feel like they have a very slim shot at the playoffs. So I'm going to pick Seattle.
Again, another short and sweet one, Seattle. Houston, we all know how they've been this year. Seattle's had their struggles too, but I think this game is in favor of Seattle.
Nice win by the Seahawks last week to keep their quote-unquote faint playoff hopes alive. They have a better chance than the Bears, but that's a whole nother issue.
Okay.
Seattle's favored by 6.5. I think Russell Wilson will play better on the road, and they got to get a consistent running game going. They did last week, especially with that fake punt to start the game, and I think they'll continue to do that against a bad Houston team. So I'm going with the Seahawks.
All right. Davis Mills, I should say, to start the season. I don't know where I got Davis Webb from, but yeah, I just had to clean that up a little bit. A good one here in the AFC West. I mean, some people probably would have said that this should have been the Sunday night game. Raiders and Chiefs. Christine, you start this one for us.
Gosh, I mean, this is going to be a close one, I think. And man, this is the game I circled saying, which one do you want? And, in all honesty, I think I might regret this, but I think the Raiders have a chance to pull an upset here. And here's why. Both of these teams have cracked under the pressure recently. So in the end, someone's going to crack again. Someone's going to come out on top, or someone is going to get disappointed. I know it's a home game for KC, but I think Vegas has an interesting way of surprising everybody. So this is the game I'm going to pick for my upset. I'm going to go with the Raiders just because it really could be anybody's game.
Well, you're not too far, Christine. Of course, the Raiders beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead last year. Of
Yep.
course, on Sunday Night Football, the Raiders got this. Excuse me, they got destroyed by the Chiefs at home in the second half. So they can play with the Chiefs, but I'm going with Kansas City here. I know they're favored by 10. I don't know if Kansas City is going to cover the spread. That decision is up to you all. But the Chiefs' defense has been the story over the last month. Kansas City's offense got to get it together because if they don't, they're really going to get exposed come playoff time. But I'm going with the Chiefs, but don't be surprised if the Raiders cover. I'll just leave it out there.
Yeah, for some reason I'm picking the Raiders because, like I said, the Chiefs have not done anything the last few weeks to impress me. Yeah, they've won, but like I did okay, and like they haven't really done anything to impress me. So like I don't.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pick the Raiders in the upset. I'll regret it later, but you know what? I'm just gonna go
You
for
and
it.
me both, girl. You and me
Okay,
both.
cyber high five, my sister. Cyber high five, a fist bump, my sister.
There you go.
All right, Saints and Jets. The Saints, look, I don't care who's playing quarterback. Sid could be playing quarterback. I think they should still be able to beat the Jets. So I'm picking the Saints.
I could play quarterback and I could beat the Jets. So yeah, let's go New Orleans for this one. Let's go Saints.
Do we have a status with Alvin Kamara?
Probable. I think I heard they say he is probable. So he's been practicing.
I'm sure he's going to play because it's the Jets. So New Orleans is favored by 6.5 on the road. I'm going with New Orleans. Keep it
Only
short and sweet.
6.5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, gosh, that's it. Oh, I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess Vegas knows something. I guess they're only a 6.5 point favorite. All right, interesting one here in the NFC South. You got the Falcons and the Panthers. Sid, you start this one.
The Atlanta Falcons had so many opportunities to crawl back to the 500 mark. It looks like it's not going to happen this week. Matt Ryan's going to face a different defense in the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are favored by 3. Of course, there is no offensive weapons left for Mr. Ryan. Cam Newton's looking forward to turning things around. I know they fired the offensive coordinator last week. It's going to be ugly close, but I see Carolina coming out with the win. Of course, Christian McCaffrey's out for the year for the Panthers with an injury as well. Chuba Hubbard, their backup rookie running back, he's not a bad player at all. So if you're looking for a sneaky player in your fantasy team, pick him up. So I'm going with the Panthers.
Lakeena, you can go next.
Okay, to change up. Look, I've been back and forth on this one. I honestly don't know.
That's why I came to you first.
That's why you went to me. I don't know what to. Can this game end in a tie? Because I honestly
it just may be.
I honestly don't know who to pick for this. I guess I'll pick the Panthers since they're at home. And they maybe Chuba has a breakout game, I guess, or maybe Cam he likes playing at home, so maybe he'll have a nice performance. So it'll be close, but I'll pick the Panthers just because they're at home.
Ever since the quote return of Cam Newton, I think the Carolina Panthers have been kind of going this way. They were riding that high for a hot minute, and now they're going back down a little bit. So just to be different from you two, I'm going to go with Atlanta for this one just because lately Cam Newton has not looked great. No, neither of these teams look great. If you're betting, stay away from it. Like don't even go near this one. But just to be different, I'm picking Atlanta.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if they do pull it out. I mean, look, there have always been some great games between these two. As is for these two teams in the AFC North, you got the Ravens and the Browns. Of course, they played a couple weeks ago on Sunday night. Browns, despite intercepting Lamar Jackson 4 times, not able to put any offense together. I know the Ravens have had a lot of injuries. I know, Marlon Humphrey's out, of course, for the year. This is going to be one of those 9-6, 10-6, 10-7 type of games.
1970s football presented by Lakeena McGee.
Right. But I'll you know what? It's going to be close again, but I'll pick the Ravens just because I think Lamar wants to kind of redeem himself after what happened last week against the Steelers. So it's probably going to come out to a Justin Tucker field goal. I'll say that.
I think this is definitely one of those need to win situations for Baltimore. I'm going to throw a little fun fact at you. It's the first time in 30 years that the same teams have played each other back to back in weeks. So was the NFL lazy? with scheduling this, who knows? But it's kind of fun to say that. And I think Baker has still been having some issues. They do have the advantage of the Browns just because they have that extra time to prepare, given that bye week. Now the Ravens did win in week 12 over the Browns. So I think just because of that statistic alone, even though it's a home game and they've had time to prepare for it, I'm going to pick Baltimore. It's mainly because Baker's been having his own injury issues and whatnot.
Baltimore should have won that game at Pittsburgh last week. Thank you,
Yeah.
John Harbaugh, for that 2-point conversion instead of taking the one and go for overtime. But that's neither here or there. I know Baltimore's favored by 1, as you mentioned, Christine. Cleveland is coming off a bye week, so they should be the fresher team. All they have to do is run the football with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. And the defense got to come up with a couple of big plays. Pittsburgh did that toward the end of that game last week. And let's see if Myles Garrett can lead the charge for this Browns defense. I'm going with Cleveland at home, even though they're 1-point underdog.
Okay. Oh, really? They're 1-point underdog. Okay, so I guess
Baltimore's favored by 1, so it's basically a pick 'em.
Yeah, so it's a pick-up. Yeah, like Christine said, stay away from this game if you're a gambler. Don't go nowhere near this. Or don't go near this one either. It's the first of the 3:00 games. You got the Giants and the Chargers. Look, the Giants are banged up. Chargers, please get the ball, keep it moving here. You're right there in the wild card chase. Justin Herbert will have a big game. I know there's an outbreak there. I know Keenan Allen is out, so will Mike Williams. Yeah. But it really shouldn't make a difference. I mean, these are the Giants, so I think the Chargers, if they got to let Austin go run the ball for 40 times, that's fine. But just go for it. I'm picking the Los Angeles Chargers of whatever, San Diego or SoCal or whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Chargers here too. Keep it short, sweet, and simple.
Yeah, I'm going with the Chargers as well. Whoever plays quarterback for the New York Football Giants, all 3 of us could do it, but behind that garbage offensive line, no thanks. I'm going with the Chargers.
Yeah, the Bears play them in a couple of weeks too, so maybe this might be the one game. Might be the only win left that they'll be able to have, but that's another story. The 10-1 Lions fresh off their first win against the Vikings, going against the Broncos. Of course, our thoughts and prayers go out to former Bronco wide receiver Demaryius Thomas, who sadly passed away. It looks like he had been suffering from seizures last year, so our thoughts and prayers go to him and the rest of his teammates and his family. But back to business. I think the Broncos should win it. I think they'll feed off that motivation, though. I think it's the Lions. They'll be playing outside. I think they still might be in a high from that win against the Vikings. So I think Teddy Bridgewater will have a big game, and their defense will just have to win this game. So I'm picking the Broncos.
Yeah, not only condolences to the Broncos, but also the people of Michigan. We talk so much garbage about Detroit all the time, but to have something like that happen at a high school, seriously, that's not a good feeling to have, and it's actually fitting. I think that Detroit won that game last week. Just because given the circumstances, and what a great way to get their first actual win, along with Michigan before them. They're getting their win the night before. So again, we can hate on them as much as you want, but it was kind of fitting that Michigan kind of took over last weekend. But when it comes to this game, Denver's got this one in the bag. Detroit definitely had luck and maybe a little something else on their side too last week.
And that Michigan High School got the game ball from the Detroit Lions organization.
Which is awesome. Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome.
But as far as this game is concerned, I'm going with Denver. They're an 8.5-point favorite at home.
All right. So the 49ers and the Bengals, kind of a late game for Cincy. I know they've had injury issues that the 49ers have. I mean, and Cincinnati needs to win this game in order to kind of keep up, pace with in the wild card spot. This is another pick 'em for me. Oh shoot! I'll pick Cincy again. Don't let me down this time, Cincy, or else I'm going to look at you funny. So I'm picking Cincinnati. I think if they keep Joe Burrow upright, I think that's going to be the key. Please keep him upright, and you'll be fine. But that 49ers defense is pretty formidable, so I'm already regretting my pick. So.
I'm going with San Francisco in a slight
I
upset.
knew it.
I knew you were
One
doing good.
because
That's why the
Cincinnati, one because Cincinnati got their doors blown off by the Chargers last week, as I told you was going to happen on this
Yeah,
show.
thanks for reminding us.
Yeah. Thank you,
And
Sid.
number two, San Francisco, despite that bad loss last week at Seattle, looks like Jimmy G is starting to turn the quarter. As of right now, he's my starting quarterback in fantasy. So if you can cut the turnovers down to a 0, they'll be great. They're running the ball great with Elijah Mitchell. And if the Bosa kid can show up on defense, I think that it's going to be an ugly, close game, but I think San Francisco is going to come out on top.
Well, Cincinnati, don't let me down this time. Go with Cincinnati too, just because they've had more of a high and more success this season as opposed to the 49ers, where they're just starting to get things clicking again. So, and it's a home game for Cincy too. So Cincinnati.
All right. We might hopefully we'll be celebrating a Cincy win. Christine.
Yeah, really.
Of course.
I'll be watching that game in its entirety on my computer screen.
All right. One of the games of the week on CBS. Of course, CBS has a doubleheader again this week. You got the Bills and the Bucks. Christine, you start this one for us.
Yay! I wanted to start. Okay, so I know the Bills fans are kind of shocked right now still. I have another fun fact. I like looking up these fun facts. It's the first time that a game, what they had with the Patriots last week, it's the first time since the Saints team in 1978 that it was a completely all-run game situation. And you would think with the Bills being in the location where they are and what weather they were going to get, you would think that they would have done the same thing as what Belichick did with the Patriots. Now, the Bears, they tried to do that, but with our O-line and quarterback and coach, that just wasn't going to happen. It just wasn't going to happen. However, I think the Bucks are 9-3, right? And they're top in the NFC South. They had a great win against Atlanta. I believe Gronk and Brady, that was their 6th touchdown reception together, or 60th touchdown
60th,
yes. So I just think Tampa has, I don't know, because you have the Bills that were riding a complete high and now they're downturning, but I know they probably want that win against Tampa. However, I wouldn't underestimate the power of Tom Brady, especially at a home game. So I'm going to pick Tampa Bay.
I'm going with the Colin Cowherd method. The team that gets embarrassed on Monday on prime time the previous week will come back to have a better effort the next week. I think the Bills will do that, even though they lost by 4. They got, no pun intended, they got that manhood taken away from them. And trust me, as you mentioned, Christine, they want to rebound with a strong effort. I think you're going to get that. But the offense must play much better. And it starts with their quarterback, Josh Allen. And as I said before all season, I'll say it again. If Allen's your leading rusher instead of your running backs, it's going to be a problem, especially against this good Tampa Bay defense.
Right.
I'm going to go out on a limb and pick Buffalo in a close one.
Oh God, I've been back and forth in this game all last couple of days, and I look at what happened with Buffalo, and I know they're smarting from that loss. I think they still are. But I think they're, they got to go on the road, and I'm sure, Tom Brady and the Bucks will be waiting for them. So I'm picking the Bucks only because they're at home. Although I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills somehow pull it off. But I think the Bucks are just a better team. All right, a really good one here on Monday night. I know the Monday night guys are looking forward to this game. They get to be in a warm setting too. I mean, that's another big thing I'm sure for them. Rams and Cardinals. Sid, you start this one for us.
Oh, this is going to be a classic game on Monday night. Two NFC West rival teams. Arizona, we all know what they did to the Bears last week. The Rams got back on track against a bad Jaguars team. Arizona's at home. They're favored by 2.5. Your shoe is going to be smart. I'm picking the Rams. Remember, Arizona beat the Rams on their home turf early in the season. And that was the Rams' only blip at that time. But now it's time for the tables to turn. I think the Rams defense is going to step up. I think Matthew Stafford is going to have a good game. He doesn't have a great game, but he needs to have a good game. stop throwing pick sixes, and run the ball with some consistency. And if they could do that, the Rams will win. The Rams have revenge on their mind. They get an extra day to prepare. I'm going with the Rams on the road.
You want me to go next, Christine?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'll do that. I'll do that. Yeah, I mean, this is gonna be a classic one here. It could come down to a Hail Mary. It could come down to a last second, field goal. Come down to a last second touchdown drive. Who knows? But look, 37-20. The Rams lost to the Cardinals. I'm sure they're gonna want that revenge. Problem is, the Cardinals still got a lot to play for, though. They're the number 1 seed right now. They know they have to keep pace with the Packers because the Packers on the tiebreaker against them. Everyone's getting healthy with the Cardinals. For the most part, Chandler Jones might be back. They're kind of practicing him up a little bit, although he'll be limited. It's going to be a close one, but I'm picking the Cardinals in a very close one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you too, Lakeena, and say the Cardinals. And here's why. So since the Rams lost to them in week 4, they've only been 5-3 since. And it appears to me that Stafford is only winning against okay teams. So the real question is, can he actually beat a good team? That's the main question I have. So I think with the showing what we saw last week, granted it's the Bears, but we couldn't even stop them. And the whole Kyler Murray doing the "I'm back" thing, that was kind of hilarious. Like that whole memo that was sent out. I just kind of rolled my eyes at that one, but we all saw what he can do. And again, at one point they were undefeated. So I am going to give this one to Arizona. I think Monday night actually struck gold with this one, evidently.
Oh yeah, we might be hearing Steve Levy call like maybe a game-winning touchdown drive, or maybe another Hail Mary. Who knows?
Right.
All right.
Don't forget that game's also on ABC and no Manning cast.
Oh yeah, no Manning cast. Also too, it's going to be simulcast. So I think these are 2 West Coast
teams. What's going on?
Yeah, but
they're going to return for the last week of the regular season. They'll be their last broadcast of the regular season.
Week? Is that what they're calling their bye week?
They only signed up for 10 each year, those 3 years, and I think they're already at 9. So fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, they won't be able to call Vikings and Bears and Vikings next week. So I really wanted that too, but it is what it is. But last but certainly least, Bears and Packers. I want to keep it short and sweet. I'm sorry, NBC. I'm sorry, to America. All this stuff about, they're going to use all this as motivation, blah, 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 and I believe that they just posted the injury stuff for the Bears. Like Hitz is probable. He'll be a game time decision. He's questionable. Mario Edwards Jr. is also questionable. Marquise Goodwin is doubtful. So is Andy Dalton. Also Angelo who is out? Cassius Mars, he is out. I don't think that really matters. No. But
that doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that doesn't really matter. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter at all. So, look, the Packers know they have to win this game. I know they're not. I heard Matt LaFleur's comments say, it's going to be a bye week for them. I think he's just saying that they're going to keep their guys on their toes. Aaron Rodgers, look, he's 22-5 against the Bears. He's going to be 23-5. I'm picking the Packers. Will the Bears get blown out? Maybe, but I think they're going to keep it close for a little bit, especially now that Justin Fields is back. But it's going to be the Packers all the way.
I got the Packers defense as of now starting on my fantasy roster, so you can make that for what you will. But back to this game, as we said before, we're looking at the top of this hour. The Bears did keep it close in the first meeting at Soldier Field this season. They need to stick to that script. I don't know how long they can do that, but regardless, the Packers are favored by 12.5. I'm taking the Packers in the points.
Yeah, this is what I'll have to say. First 2 series of the game with the Cardinals, they both ended in interceptions. At the beginning of the game, it clearly said on the screen, and the broadcasters can deny it as much as they want, it said that Nagy was calling the plays. Once you see that, you already know where that game was going to go. They could show the lame duck offensive coordinator as much as they want, but it was Nagy that was controlling the game. 4 turnovers ended with the Cardinals giving them 20-plus points. That's insane in itself too. And at one point, I was actually impressed with a couple of series that Dalton led, with how quick the offense was moving it along, especially with the weather conditions, just because Arizona isn't used to something like that. So I liked that pace of the game. And at one point, I thought, hey, this could actually be close. They had a chance. The Bears failed to do what the Patriots ended up succeeding in with running the ball. And given the conditions, I know it was risky, but I would have liked to seen a little bit more throwing, because at one point, you hand the ball off to Montgomery enough, they're going to pick up on that really quick, really quick. There was a nice flea flicker move that I'm like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. Just more trick plays like this. Keep them coming, please. But, with the Packers coming off of a bye and with the extended history, there's just no way that I think that the Bears are going to win this one. I know that Fields, they say that he's healthy, but just how exactly is he feeling? Like, how healthy is he really? At this point, especially if you don't want to risk the future of the Bears, I wouldn't even put Fields in for this game. I would rather see Folds at this point. This is what I was asking for on Sunday when things were just kind of falling apart. Just put Foles in. There's honestly nothing to lose at this point. I would rather have a good draft pick than this game be won, in all honesty, just because there really isn't a point. Is it great to have that notch on your belt saying, yeah, we beat the Packers? Of course. But is it worth it in the long run when it comes to the future? No, I don't think so. So the Packers are going to win this one, and the Bears are going to waste everybody's time on Sunday night. And I'm sorry for that.
Remember that draft pick goes to the New York Giants this year because of the trade for Justin Fields in the draft last year.
Yeah.
All right, and those are your NFL Week 14 pigskin pick'ems here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Want to give a couple of shout outs to real quick. I know we're up against it. Shout out to Marc-Andre Fleury, who got his 500th win as the Blackhawks. That was actually a really good game. He got only the third goalie in history, which is astonishing to me that he's just the third goalie to win 500 games. So that's a big shout out to him. Yeah. They got a nice win against the Canadiens, shutting them out 2-0. They play the Maple Leafs, continue their Canadian road trip. So we'll see how they do there. Also, to your buddy Ron Harper Jr. said hit a half court shot to upset number
I saw
one.
that, yes, against Purdue. Yes.
Yeah, number one.
They might put we got to get a couple of our college football, basketball people on the program. Hopefully to the sports booking guest guys. Hopefully we get Stephen Bartle on there. But then I had this crazy thought this morning. I think he's a senior now. I'm talking about Ron Harper Jr.
Yes.
Yeah, that shot, hopefully continues on. Except for against Illinois, of course. But hopefully if Ron Harper Jr. builds off of that, that game, what happened last night, might put him in the NBA.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
really
Christine.
Quick about college basketball. I don't know why Illinois isn't in the top 10. I saw that list and I'm like, wait a minute, where the heck is Illinois in this? They had a great season.
You get to watch. Yeah, you get to watch it tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time on Fox. They'll take on Arizona down there in Champaign. So if they can win that game, they'll probably bump them up. They'll probably get in the top 25.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe that.
Well, remember, too, they've been kind of up and down. They had a couple of bad losses. They lost to Cincinnati. They also lost to Marquette, too. Of course, they didn't have Kofi Coburn there. At the time, he was suspended for, we won't get into the reason why. But that's one of the reasons why. Also, too, but a big game on Sunday, which you'll see on ABC at 2 o'clock, Villanova and the defending national champion Baylor. People keep forgetting that.
I know. I forget that, too.
Yeah, but, if Baylor beats Villanova, they could end up being the number one team in the country, too. So they're right at number 2. So should be a good one here. A great top 10 matchup on ABC. So in between the NFL games, make sure you guys check that game out. And also, too, I need you two to start being more versed in college hoops. I mean, college football is over with. Conference play is going to be starting in some of these. Big Ten's already started theirs. So I'm going to need you guys to start following college basketball a little more closely.
Lakeena, the college sports dean. Take a charge.
Shots.
Also, one more time, one more thing. Shout out to Steve Kerr, who looks like he'll be the new head coach of the USA men's basketball team. That news came out about an hour ago. Him, Monty Williams, Eric Spoelstra, and Gonzaga head coach Mark Few will run out your coaching staff. That's a pretty good list. I know I was lobbying for Jay Wright, but I actually like this group.
I love it.
Yeah, it's an all-star staff, and those are great basketball minds, and hope they can pick some great talent for the next Olympics to go along with it.
With Grant Hill at the helm, yeah. So you want to do the sports media stuff really quick, Sid?
Yes, you can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
Oh, I meant the sports media stuff, Sid.
Oh, we were. This is live, folks. We're running out of time, Lakeena. We got to do this on Monday, unless you have a story that really needs to be mentioned real quick.
No, not really.
Okay,
really,
yeah, we'll do it on Monday. Then. But you guys know where to follow me on social media.
All right, you can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG. Christine, where can people follow you in the social media streets?
You can follow me on Twitter at CManika_KXRB.
All right, so enjoy the. I know the weather's gonna be a little bit iffy in some parts of the country. I know Christine. I know her area in Sioux Falls got hammered by snow. Also, too, like school is out. School was out today too. So they got the snow day there. So
yep.
So just be good to each other. Wash your hands, wear your mask, and just be safe out there. I know there's gonna be a lot of stuff going on, but just be safe out there, folks. For Sid and Christine, I'm Lakeena. This is the Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bear down.
Oh.